Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. I'm Lore from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be discussing the General Vezax encounter. Vezax is primarily an endurance fight that will test the ability of your healers and casters to use their mana efficiently. As soon as Vezax is engaged, he'll apply a raid-wide debuff called Aura of Despair that prevents any and all normal forms of mana regeneration for most players. This includes not only standard mana per 5 and spirit regen, but also abilities such as Life Tap or Evocation, mana recovery talents such as Illumination or Rapture, and buffs such as Blessing of Wisdom or Replenishment. Even potions and flasks are ineffective. The only exceptions are the Protection Paladin's Spiritual Attunement, the Retribution Paladin's Judgments of the Wise, the Enhancement Shaman's Shamanistic Rage, and the Hunter's Aspect of the Viper. These effects are intensified to help compensate for the lack of raid buffs. However, it should be noted that any direct healing done by Prot Pallies, Ret Pallies, or Enhancement Shaman is reduced by 75% instead. The only way for the other classes to recover mana is by killing the Serenite Vapors that will spawn periodically around the room. Once destroyed, they'll drop a green puddle on the ground that raid members can stand in to gain a stacking buff that will return mana at the cost of health. This will stack every 2 seconds, and each stack will double the amount of mana gained and health lost. You'll only be able to get about 5 or 6 stacks before the damage gets out of control and you start wasting precious healer mana, or worse, die. However, this is all shadow damage, so a shadow protection buff or aura can help mitigate it a bit. Since the Vapors can spawn anywhere in a fairly large radius around Vezax, the easiest way to make sure you get use out of as many of them as possible is to split the raid into 2 or more groups with a designated area to cover. Each should be assigned at least 1 healer and a couple caster DPS. However, you can occasionally go for a while where only one group is able to reach the nearby Vapors and the other group runs out of mana. Should this happen, the group with no mana should move to take the next Vapor that spawns, and the other group, which will hopefully have a good amount of mana from all the Vapors, should skip it and focus on keeping the tank alive. Aside from balancing mana efficiency, the raid will need to be aware of a handful of other abilities. One of the most important for terms of DPS is called Shadow Crash. This is a large, slow-moving shadow projectile that will be fired at a random raid member and deal a large amount of shadow damage to everyone in a short radius near where it lands and knock them away. After it lands, however, a black puddle will appear. Raid members who stand inside this puddle will see a 100% increase in casting speed and magical damage dealt, and a 70% reduction in mana cost, as well as a 75% reduction to all healing done. Nearby caster DPS should step in the puddle, while healers will want to stay clear of it. It's important, however, to not bunch up too much while standing on the puddles left behind by either Shadow Crash or Serenite Vapor. This is due to another of Vezax's randomly targeted abilities called Mark of the Faceless. When a raid member is afflicted by Mark of the Faceless, Vezax will siphon life from any other raid members within around 10 yards of the marked players. The damage siphon players will take is relatively low, however the healing Vezax takes is significant, so this should be avoided at all costs. All raid members should stay spread out as much as possible and be ready to move at a moment's notice should they or a nearby ally be targeted for this ability. Vezax's other 2 abilities are fortunately much easier to deal with. Occasionally he will begin casting a spell called Searing Flames, which is very easy to spot due to the large spinning graphical effects that appear around him while casting. Should he successfully cast this spell, the entire raid will be hit for a large amount of fire damage and be afflicted by a 75% reduction in armor, almost guaranteeing a quick wipe. However, this can be interrupted and has a 2-second cast time, so as long as you have a raid member or 2 that can interrupt it reliably, it shouldn't pose much of a threat. The final aspect of the fight to master is Vezax's Surge of Darkness. He can cast this about every 60 seconds, and while active, it will double his melee damage while cutting his movement speed by around half. There are 2 ways of dealing with this. One is to attempt to take advantage of the reduced movement speed and kite him around the room. However, we found the fight to be much more controlled by simply having our Death Knight main tank use Icebound Fortitude to simply tank through the enrage. Since the 50% damage reduction on Icebound Fortitude cancels out the 100% increase from Surge of Darkness, the fight basically continues as normal. Druids can do the same through Barkskin and their generally higher health pools, and Paladins and Warriors can alternate their 2-minute Shield Wall and Divine Protection abilities with cooldowns provided by other raid members such as Pain Suppression or Hand of Sacrifice. As long as everyone is handling the various abilities properly, there should be very little raid damage other than what is necessary for mana regen. The main tank, however, will be taking quite a bit of damage as Vezax hits rather hard. The key to this fight is in sustaining your healer's mana pools while making sure you put out just enough damage to beat the fairly lenient 10-minute enrage timer. Furthermore, although melee DPS has the luxury of not having to worry about juggling mana pools or moving away from others, they are affected by a 20% reduction in attack speed and don't benefit from the damage buffs provided by the Shadow Crash puddles. A healthy balance of both melee and ranged DPS is best for this encounter. Once you've gotten the hang of things, Vezax is a very simple fight that should run fairly smoothly. As always, you can find more information on this and other encounters at the Project Marmot forums on TankSpot.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, just follow the link in the movie details. Thanks for watching, and good luck!